What's up guys, this is Desm101. Welcome to the channel. I hope this video finds you well and in good health in these crazy times. We've all been on lockdown for a while, so anyway, today we're going to be taking a look at a Famicom game that's a port of an arcade game, Arkanoid 2, also known as Revenge of Dough. And I was able to play this thanks to the Retro USB AVS. And that's because it allows me to input this special kind of paddle controller, which you may or may not have heard about for the Famicom. There was one released for the NES, but we're going to check out this one today. So, let's get started. Taito's arcade hit Arkanoid was released in 1986, and it revitalized the genre of paddle games, which began with Atari's Pong in 1972 and continued with their 1975 title Breakout. These games are noted for their use of a rotary control dial to provide analog control of the paddle. By the early 1980s, Breakout and Pong were not very popular anymore. Taito held an internal contest to design a game based on the block breaker genre, which was won by both designers Fujita and Sugino. They were inspired by some of the visuals and art style of Tron from 1982 and decided to add power-ups to the formula, which presented more depth to the gameplay. The blocks now had a greater variety, such as metal blocks, and even enemies would appear to interfere with the ball movement. As players destroyed certain blocks, a power-up item would drop towards the paddle, and if the player caught the item, they could gain abilities, such as extending the width of the paddle, holding onto the ball, multi-ball, shooting a laser cannon, and more. Each level would have a unique design, which must be cleared out by the player while they deal with enemies and try to avoid losing the ball. The game spans 33 levels and features an end boss based on a moai statue called Dough. The game was a huge hit and saw clones in the arcade as well as ports to a number of home consoles including the Famicom and NES. The game was unique on these two systems since it came packaged with a special paddle controller called Vaus, named after the ship. In 1987, Taito followed up with the sequel entitled Revenge of Dough, improving on the genre once again. The game now has branching paths, where the player must decide what direction to go in at the completion of a level. This gives the game a greater replayability, 32 stages in each direction for a total of 64 possible levels to try. In 1988, Revenge of Dough, also known as Arkanoid 2, got a port to the Famicom, but not to the NES this time, perhaps due to poor sales of the first title, or possibly the result of Nintendo's strict licensing and limited release allowances per publisher. For this home version, there are some minor changes. You now start the game replaying the end of the previous entry, the battle with Dough, perhaps one of the first times we have seen this concept in a game. Later, the idea was used in Dragon's Trap and Symphony of the Night. The game also came with an updated version of the Vaus controller. I was able to connect it to my AVS since I don't have a Famicom, with its own port built in to allow for daisy chaining it with the previous Vaus controller for two-player simultaneous play, which is similar to the classic Pong gameplay. New to this version, in addition to the multiplayer, is the edit mode, where you can design, save, and play your own levels, which is a nice touch. The game can still be controlled with the normal control pad, with B button being used to speed up the movement if needed. Using the Vaus controller feels nice and responsive, where each end of the range of the rotary knob corresponds with the edges of the playfield. This allows for very quick movements to be made with relative ease compared to a D-pad. It will still require a lot of practice to get through the game, however, as it's still a hefty challenge even just a couple stages into the game, so don't think that you're going to make it through quickly. Making it through all 32 stages is quite a feat. Dough awaits you at the end in two forms, as well as a midpoint of the game at level 17. He controls a mini-boss that must be defeated. It's like a warm-up for the final battle. The Vaus is a neat controller, but it has limited use. You can also use it to control the Famicom version of Chase HQ. It will also work on the first Arkanoid, but there is a big issue. The range of motion does not match the playfield, so you will miss any shots where the ball goes to the far right of the screen, unfortunately. The cord is also very short, like the Famicom cords, so I highly recommend an extension cord for the Famicom accessory port of the AVS. If the Vaus is plugged into the AVS, it will basically disable a normal controller input unless you are running a compatible game. The NES version of the Vaus controller is relatively hard to come by, fetching over $50 in most cases. So if you have an AVS and are interested in this accessory, you can find the first and second Arkanoid games with the box complete with game and controller for relatively the same price, around $50 or a little more. It's not an accessory for everyone. I think this is mostly for fans of unique and interesting oddities for the Famicom. But if you're a fan of the Arkanoid series and want an accurate way to play the game on your AVS or Famicom, this is it. Of course, Arkanoid didn't stop there. In 1997, there was Arkanoid Do It Again, which was released on the Super NES and Super Famicom. This version, however, didn't have a special controller, but it did support the Super NES mouse. Also that same year, in 1997, Arkanoid Returns was released in the arcades. Continuing on, in 2007, Arkanoid DS was released, and also there has been some other versions, such as the WiiWare version of Arkanoid Plus, and you might find some Arkanoid games on mobile, such as Arkanoid vs. Space Invaders and Arkanoid for iOS. Alright, and that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you next time.